We all know who the popular choices are for Smash Ultimate when it comes to speculating the characters that will eventually be revealed as DLC. From Crash Bandicoot to Ryu Hayabusa to even a new Pokemon being added to the roster, we have all heard the consistent names that keep popping up in speculation videos and discussion boards and all that stuff. Wouldn't you know it, it's a popular exercise to talk about popular characters because they're, well, popular. But today we're going to look in a different direction. For this video, and we're going to discuss the characters that are most slept on by the Smash community. Those being the characters whose chances are fairly good, but are not brought up much within the community. There are many, but I'm narrowing this list of characters down to a potential 5 that I could see taking up these last 2 spots in Fighters Pass Volume 2, despite the fact that no one is really considering them all that much these days. What we must first look at is that the characters of Volume 2 have been very unpredictable. Not a single one of these characters leaked before their actual reveals. Many of these characters were genuine surprises, and not any of them have been the usual community picks. Unless, of course, if you do count Steve as one of those, I guess you could consider him the one exception. That's entirely up to you. We as a community think we always know what's next, and typical human behavior to mysteries, we do this. We believe that we can deduce any pattern that these character choices may be following in order to determine which character is going to be coming next. I think it's safe to say that for this second pass, most of these predictions have fallen flat on their faces, and we have been revealed a character choice that was not very speculated upon in the community, and we just keep taking curveball after curveball. After Min Min, the majority of the second pass had to be first-party Nintendo characters, because Byleth ended the first pass, and Min Min started the second. Another third-party villain is certainly a guarantee because Sephiroth was confirmed, so we must be getting another one of those, and so on and so forth. I believe now in quarter 2 of 2021, I think we can all agree there is no definitive pattern going on here with the choices for these challenger packs. So now, we shall look at characters who have just as viable a shot as any of the more popularly discussed characters for Fighters Pass Volume 2, but they just don't seem to be discussed all that much in comparison. But let's start off by talking about the inclusion of a new fighter from a fighting game franchise, a genre that has very few characters in Smash itself, in which it only has 3 so far, and one of them happens to be an Echo Fighter. We have the likes of Street Fighter, represented by Ryu and Ken, along with the Suzaku Castle stage. These inclusions have been around since base game. While we've had the inclusion of SNK's Terry from Fatal Fury and King of Fighters fame, in the first Fighters Pass along with the stage, King of Fighters Stadium. I know we have Min Min who counts as a first-party fighting game character, but I think this choice I'm about to talk about is slept on and more likely than you might think. This character has the potential to be the Terry of this pass, a spot that many expect Ryu Hayabusa to be in, and it's a character who represents an entire lower-key Japanese third-party company that Nintendo and Sakurai can pay homage to very well in Smash Ultimate. The character I'm introducing is none other than Soul Bad Guy from Guilty Gear. A popular recurring member of the roster for this respective series would do for Arc System Works, the company behind both Guilty Gear and BlazBlue fighting games, is going to do what Terry did for SNK. He could represent many Arc System Works related music tracks and spirits, but beyond just what could come with his Challenger Pack, Soul Bad Guy would be different from the Shotos that we already have in Smash Ultimate. With his trademark sword, the Junkyard Dog, by his side, Soul Bad Guy will wield a big, heavy, clunky weapon for his moveset, making him slightly more heavy than the other fighting game characters we already have on the roster, and not to mention his combo potential will be a little more bait and punish, and you have to time your shots for big blows. A little more all or nothing, and slower combos compared to, say, like Ryu and Ken or Terry. Of course, every character can combo in their own way, but as far as mobility is concerned, Soul Bad Guy will be a touch on the slower side. Also, here's a little interesting fact for you. Soul Bad Guy's real name in the series is Frederick Bulsara, which is a tribute to Queen's legendary lead singer, Freddie Mercury. Series creator, Daisuke Ishiwatari, said so, and he even provides the voice for the character himself. So, I wonder if Soul were to be included in Smash, if Mr. Ishiwatari would voice Mr. Bad Guy in the biggest crossover in gaming. As a big Queen fan myself, I thought that was an awesome little fun fact. But anyway, Guilty Gear is the type of series that I'm sure Sakurai enjoys, and such a collaboration is rather slept on by this community. The question remains, does Nintendo want to feature Arc System Works in their remaining DLC? Guilty Gear itself has not appeared a whole lot on Nintendo systems over the years, but recently it has seen more releases through various ports. BlazBlue, on the other hand, has been released a little more frequently on Nintendo platforms, so really this could go either way. Honestly, the only character that gets talked about for this sort of legacy Japanese third-party representation is only Ryu Hayabusa these days, and honestly, the more expected Hayabusa becomes, the less likely I actually think he is. Arc System Works would get representation through their fighting game history, and I think that's a genre that may see one more challenger pack in this remaining DLC. Next up on our list is the two Commandos you play in the original Contra, Bill Riser and Lance Bean. Again, all the talk is about Ryu Hayabusa being the one to represent one more classic series from the NES days. While Ninja Gaiden would be a good choice for that, I think Contra is the superior choice. And it's one that I don't see a whole lot of discussion going about these days. None. So, the one character type that's always discussed as missing from Smash Brothers is a shooter character. And I do know that when most people talk about this and mention this, they want a character from a first-person shooting game. But I think getting these commanders from a classic run-and-gun game is even more likely, despite how slept on it is. You see, there could be 4 palette swaps for Bill Riser, and 4 for Lance Bean. But of course, much like Hero and the Koopalings before them, their kits would be exactly the same. They would surely play out to be another zoner-type character, but other than Resource Management Steve, who might be considered somewhat of a zoner or kind of zonery, we don't really have a pure projectile-based spacing character for the second season of DLC. The last one was Banjo and Kazooie in the last pass. Should we get any gunner of sorts, they will be a projectile user, obviously. I think that goes without saying. But perhaps the first popular shooting game ever done that got its start on Nintendo's first home console seems like a match made for Smash Brothers. Everyone is hoping for the grandfather of first-person shooters, but what about the forefathers of shooters in general? Definitely slept on by the community when it comes to a potential retro NES third-party rep. Honestly, I think most of those potential characters are slept on if their name isn't Ryu Hayabusa, but maybe the reason Contra isn't talked about so much is because Konami already has fighters in Smash Ultimate. Snake's return and the debut of the Belmonts in Ultimate marks 3 characters this company already has in Smash, so perhaps maybe that could be a nail in the coffin. I think this could be considered a stronger case for Bill and Lance. I know I'm looking into a pattern here myself and therefore making myself a hypocrite, but hey, we're all naturally flawed, right? Anyway, Microsoft has 2 featured DLC fighters with Banjo and Kazooie and Steve. Also, Square Enix has had 2 fighters featured as DLC, Hero and Sephiroth, as well as having Cloud in the base game. Now, while Konami has not had any fighters featured as DLC yet, perhaps the negotiations have been left open, and for the remaining third-party characters, they could all be from represented third-party companies in base game or otherwise. Give these fellas an aim mechanic and we are good to go. Shoot every opponent that moves. There is always the potential of more recent popular shooting game protagonists to get this Duke, but Commandos Bill Riser and Lance Bean are no doubt slept on hard by the Smash community. I think in modern speculation, Bandai Namco has been getting more involved in the conversation for possibly being the next third-party company to get a challenger pack in the final 2 slots of DLC. Mainly the one series that's consistently talked about is the Tales of series. This is due to a couple of factors. First, and perhaps the most important one, is the one and only missing Mii costume from the Wii U era. That is the Lloyd Irving Mii costume. Lloyd was the protagonist of Tales of Symphonia, and even though it was a multi-platform release, it has gotten a reputation of being a GameCube-era game, and it is without question seen as the Tales game with the most Nintendo heritage behind it. So, in speculation, people think that the missing Lloyd costume is either being upgraded to fully playable status to rep the Tales franchise in Smash, or it's being saved to be paired with another Tales character. The most talked about one, and perhaps the character who is Lloyd's largest competition, is that of Yuri Lowell from Tales of Vesperia. Now, even though Vesperia did not see a Nintendo platform release in its heyday, it has been ported to the Switch in modern times, and ended up becoming one of the most popular entries in the franchise's history. Yuri himself is perhaps the most popular Tales protagonist ever. So many are speculating that if the Lloyd costume is returning and not being upgraded, they're saving it to release alongside Yuri and his surrounding Tales content. I think if Lloyd's costume is being saved, it could be bundled with a different Bandai Namco Challenger Pack that is not Tales of. What series is it that I think is being slept on from the co-developers of Smash Ultimate, you might ask? None other than Dark Souls. One of the premier series from Software that Bandai Namco owns the publishing rights for. It seems like a series that Sakurai and perhaps even Nintendo would like to represent for variety's sake. The Chosen Undead, which is the official canon name given to your created character that you play as and level up throughout this series of action RPGs, would have a neat visual aesthetic in this game. Sure, while he may wield a sword and shield much like Link in Hero, this is a fighter that's clad in a suit of armor, and that instantly would make them stand out among the Smash cast. Also, the implementation of different forms of sorcery spells from the series broadens the moveset potential for Chosen Undead even deeper. Using iconic attacks like the Lightning Spear and the use of the Estus Flask to revitalize and heal up some percent to create a very unique high-risk, high-reward playstyle, which is very representative of the series' notoriously challenging games. I mean, these games are so hard they've caused many a player to want to rip the hair out of their scalp, okay? Like, where they are that challenging. I think Dark Souls is just as viable of an option as Tales of, and it's mainly because it's a much more relevant series. And I think it could bring a much more unique mechanic with the Chosen Undead as a fighter, as opposed to any sort of mechanics that the Tales of protagonists could bring with it. There's a lot more moveset potential with Dark Souls as opposed to Tales of, in my opinion. The only real drawback against Dark Souls is the lack of releases on Nintendo platforms over the years. The first one was ported to Switch in modern times, but the other games have never really seen any releases on Nintendo consoles. Whereas Tales, particularly Lloyd's game of origin Symphonia, are seen as a Nintendo heritage pick. But if we think back to the first pass with a character like Joker being the first DLC announced for a Fighter's Pass, and then we jump ahead to the second Fighter's Pass here in Volume 2 and the inclusion of Sephiroth, we know that having a ton of Nintendo history is not always the prerequisite we think it to be. We're going to change gears somewhat and focus on first party. It seems the first party choices that the dev teams have decided on for the second Fighter's Pass are redemption choices that did not make the base roster. Min Min from ARMS being the first fighter of Volume 2, and Pyra/Mithra from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 being the most recent additions. Most people immediately think of a new Pokemon from Sword and Shield will get this Duke, but again, this particular first-party choice, much like third-party characters like Crash Bandicoot and Ryu Hayabusa, is very much on the old expected tier list of the Smash community, which means I don't think it's as likely as it once seemed to be. So who could possibly be a more recent IP that's going to get a Smash revitalization? I think we could see the inclusion of Captain Toad. Oh, but Bracer, he doesn't jump in canon. Yeah, we all know this. And obviously, we break canon for him to be implemented into Smash Brothers. Let's not pretend that other molds were not broken to make a fighter work. Like, look at Duck Hunt, for example. In that game, the dog collected duck carcasses. He collected the dead ducks. And here, the dog and the duck are fighting in unison in Smash Brothers. Compromises can be made to make the fighter work on this roster. Toad has always been a long-time recurring character for the Mario series and has always felt like a missing piece to the Smash roster, in much the same way that Waluigi's exclusion has always felt. Though I can admit that the demand for Wah is a lot more than the demand for Toad and Toadette. But with the abilities and a new character of sorts fleshed out in the Captain Toad Treasure Tracker puzzle spin-off game, the abilities used in that game from the pickaxe to picking up turnips and taking off that heavy-ass backpack and swinging it at your foes, there's enough to pull from this standalone game. Not to mention it was one of a handful of Wii U titles that got the port to the much more successful Switch. Certainly a first party that's more than possible and just doesn't get talked about all too much. We have come to the last of the slept-on possibilities for this video. While this may not be as potentially likely as any of the characters I mentioned beforehand, this character itself is slept on by the community and I have pulled a 180 on them. This character choice was seemingly outright dismissed by me and others as just simply impossible. In fact, last summer in 2020, I had them in my Impossible Characters video right alongside Doomguy. And now here I'm listing them as a slept-on possibility in the spring of 2021. Oh, how time can give you a big turnaround, right? Now, the last character that I will talk about in this video is Halo's Master Chief. Microsoft and Nintendo have been collaborating more and more and more in the last few years, and there are a ton of rumors pointing towards a huge collaboration, something big that's going to go on between these two gaming giants sometime later this year. We don't know what, but something seems to be on the horizon. At least that's what all the big-time speculation and gaming news sources seem to be hinting and pointing towards. But even if we put that aside, we already have two characters from Microsoft properties in Smash Ultimate already. Banjo Kazooie and the Minecrafters. Perhaps the deal has always been to include 3 Microsoft characters from the start of this DLC all the way through the end and do 1 character a year, starting off with Banjo and Kazooie in 2019, Steve and Minecraft in 2020, and for the upcoming final big E3 reveal of Smash Ultimate, they saved Microsoft's most iconic Spartan for last. I will have more to say about this slept-on possibility in a video to come next month, but before I wrap things up, I will make note that a significant glitch has been found regarding Dark Pit. Since Pyra and Mithra drop, that is. Dark Pit's arrow gets stuck in him, and while this is going on, it delays the reaction of other projectiles. Somewhat of a delayed fuse, if you will. Many people have been thinking that this glitch is because Dark Pit is being used as a placeholder for a future unrevealed DLC fighter. And the one attack that has come to the mind of many of us is, of course, the Needler from the Halo series. This is a gun that's like a unique blaster that shoots out these purple crystal-looking needles that stick into your enemies and eventually they go boom and explode, which is why this needle in Dark Pit, causing a delayed effect from other projectiles, has a ton of people speculating. But even aside from this glitch, the weapons that Master Chief uses, like the aforementioned Needler, the Energy Sword, and some of the other guns, to me, are far more easy to nerf into family-friendly mode for this Nintendo crossover, especially when you compare Chief's weapons to other FPS icons like the Doomslayer, who would be near impossible to keep faithful to his series of origin through the nerfing process. Master Chief seemingly does not have this ultra-violent design issue that many of his genre counterparts do have. Also, being owned by a major company that already has a fair amount of Smash representation may be good for his chances. I mean, some may look at that as a reason for Master Chief's chances to be weak, but I think it very much works to his benefit. I mean, only time will tell for sure, but Master Chief, much like any other popular Western third-party character, is E3 or bust, meaning if it doesn't happen at E3, it ain't happening at all. But an E3 reveal is right around the corner, and I think this Spartan's big debut is a possibility that many are sleeping on and find to be more impossible than it really actually is. So now I leave the question open to you, the viewers. Are there any possible DLC characters that you think are slept on by the rest of the community? Characters that even I missed out on their sleptness, if you will? Also, do you agree with any of the choices that I listed in this video? Leave all of your thoughts in the comments below. And one last major update for this channel going forward. Next week, I begin my Road to E3 series, where we look at 3 different possible candidates for the proverbial E3 reveal in June, based on their different companies and character categories. Next week will be the start, and it will have a focus on Capcom characters. So I hope you all enjoyed this enough to stick around for the next month's worth of content that's about to come out. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we go to that time of the video. Yes, it's rolled back again. As you can see by the lovely little graphic in front of you, there's a list to all of my social media and gaming presences. So please add and follow me on all those platforms to stay as up to date as you can with all of my content going forward. And for those of you who are new to the channel and enjoyed what you've seen and heard, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and ring that little bell notification. It really does help the channel grow. Until next time, this is Brayster, signing off.